When you encounter a sudden threat, your nervous system initiates a transient, automatic event. Your visual field expands and specific facial muscles contract. These physiological reactions evolve to aid humans in adapting to environmental problems rapidly. Taking the time to sit and consciously calculate cost-benefit ratios during a crisis is a luxury that costs lives, so our biology bypasses slow thought entirely. In the late 20th century, psychologist Paul Ekman set out to catalog these innate, evolutionary responses. His research identified 7 universal facial expressions hardwired into the human species: happiness, surprise, sadness, fright, disgust, contempt, and anger. Even individuals blind from birth produce these exact facial muscle movements. Because this morphology is a biological baseline shared by the entire species, early psychologists concluded that a smile or a frown meant the exact same thing in every society on Earth. Ekman and his colleague Wallace Friesen tested this premise in 1972 by showing a highly stressful film to groups of American and Japanese university students. Based on their shared human biology, both groups were expected to exhibit identical signs of disgust and distress. When the subjects watched the film alone, the biological baseline held true. Everyone grimaced. But when an experimenter entered the room to watch with them, the American subjects continued to show visible distress, while the Japanese subjects masked their negative feelings behind a smile. This discrepancy forced a reevaluation of human emotion. If the physiological arousal was universal, researchers had to explain why the physical expression suddenly split under social pressure. The answer arrived in the form of the neurocultural theory of emotion. It proposes a dual system framework. Human biology dictates the initial internal reaction, but a society's culture dictates the external display. In 1990, psychologist David Matsumoto built the theoretical framework to mathematically predict exactly when and how these cultural masks are applied. Correctly interpreting a face involves observing muscle movements, but the actual meaning is found in the invisible cultural rules governing the interaction. Matsumoto's predictive model relies on 2 cultural dimensions. The first maps the spectrum between individualism and collectivism. Individualistic cultures, like the United States, minimize hierarchical differences to prioritize unique identity, equality, and authentic self-expression. Collectivist cultures, such as Japan, operate differently. They place a premium on group harmony, cohesion, and strict adherence to established social roles. This chart details how a culture's position dictates emotional expression within groups and outgroups. To protect social fabric, collectivist cultures display more positive emotions to their in-groups. Individualistic cultures invert this, feeling freer to display negative emotions to in-groups and more positive emotions to outgroups. Ultimately, these rules function as behavioral boundaries. They ensure individuals act in ways that preserve the specific internal logic of their culture's social network. The second predictive dimension of Matsumoto's model shifts focus from horizontal group boundaries to vertical hierarchy. It is known as power distance. High power distance cultures are vertical societies. They rigidly enforce and acknowledge status differences between individuals. Low power distance cultures are horizontal societies, operating on structures designed to minimize gaps in power. This section reveals how power distance alters emotional expression based on relative status. In high-power distance cultures, lower-status individuals must display positive emotions upwards while swallowing negative ones. Higher-status individuals, however, routinely use negative emotions downward to reinforce their authority. In low-power distance societies, lower-status individuals retain far more freedom to express negative emotions upwards without threatening the societal structure. Under this framework, an emotional display serves a specific purpose. It reinforces the status hierarchy dictated by a society's cultural architecture. To test this theoretical framework, Matsumoto gathered empirical data from American and Japanese university students. Subjects were presented with the 6 universal emotions and asked to rate the appropriateness of expressing them across 8 distinct social situations. This table presents the study's mean display rule ratings. For anger toward outgroups, Japanese subjects rated this as significantly more appropriate than Americans did. Conversely, Americans rated expressing sadness to in-groups as highly appropriate, while Japanese subjects rated it much lower to protect group harmony. Status data also validated the power distance hypothesis. Japanese subjects rated expressing anger to lower status individuals as more appropriate than Americans did, reinforcing their hierarchy. The statistics demonstrate that our spontaneous emotional reactions are rigorously modulated by predictable cultural algorithms. How does a human brain process a raw biological impulse into a culturally compliant display in a matter of milliseconds? The process begins with a biological drive state, a physiological need that motivates immediate approach or avoidance behaviors. Cultural display rules act as an extrinsic motivation. They exert a social pressure that forces the brain to rapidly evaluate the cost-benefit ratio of expressing that raw drive. This is the cognitive appraisal phase. Before authorizing the facial muscles to fire, the brain calculates the social context. Is this person in my in-group? Are they of higher status? With repeated enforcement over a lifetime, these extrinsic societal rules become fully internalized. Suppressing a frown or forcing a polite smile ceases to be a conscious choice and becomes an automatic reflex. What feels like an authentic emotion to the individual is actually the end product of a subconscious cultural filter. To understand why human beings are so heavily motivated to obey these filters, we can apply author Julia Galef's framework of cognitive mindsets. Galef defines the scout mindset as the desire to see the world accurately and respond to the environment with pure objectivity. The soldier mindset is the psychological drive to defend your viewpoint, your in-group, and your norms at all costs. When a Japanese student masks distress with a smile in front of an experimenter, or an American openly expresses anger to a casual acquaintance, they are subconsciously operating in the soldier mindset. They are suppressing their objective, biological feelings to defend the structural integrity of their culture's specific harmony and status requirements. Emotions act as rapid biological information processing systems, but their ultimate expression on the human face is a calculated social defense. To truly read a face, you must decode the culture it is defending.